Thank you. Now, I am literally the last thing standing between you and leaving because I get to run a roundtable after this. So don't leave yet. We're running roundtables. Ryan gets to run one as well. So please stick around for some conversation about how you're getting to the airport and what flight you're taking. So we do have one more. So if, Sean, you can hear this, we're starting. I did see him. Here he's. We're starting a little bit early, so we're gonna cut him some slack.
Technically not late, actually. We're really jumping the gun here. Oh, here people. You're fine, man.
Hey, let's give him a round of applause.
It's really hard to be late, so I appreciate that.
You're actually early. You're 3 minutes early.
All right. Well, I worked really hard to be early late.
So, Steve, thanks for the introduction. My name is George DiGuido. I'm VP of Subscription Marketing at Business Insider. I've been working in email for 16 years now. Started in the ESP space, spent about 9 years there, then said, hey, I've been talking about doing email and strategy and platforms. Let's see if I can kind of cut my teeth and go to the brand side. Joined Airbnb, spent 2 years out in San Francisco, and then have been agency side and now back brand side since then. So we have a great panel, a lot of great people up on stage. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they'll do a lot better job than I would. So Newt, let's kick it off.
Hi, I'm Newt. I'm really tired of hearing my own voice. I work at ADP, the paycheck people, not the security people. And I'm on a team of marketing technologists, and I'm really happy to say at ADP I'm not a team of one. Before that, I was at Red Hat Software, not the Red Hat Society. And yeah, I love email, MarTech. I've been in the email space for about 8 years, and it's my passion. So.
Hello, my name is Ryan Heft. I'm with Keen, the footwear company, not the psychic company. Yeah,
That's a thing.
It's a thing, Keen.com, psychic company. We're KeenFootwear.com. Also, shout out to Nina. Thank you for wearing your Keens on stage. That was great.
I did. Love them.
Yeah, they're great. Great product. It's an awesome brand to work for. Really happy to be here. I've been with them for about a little over 2 years. And yeah, I am apparently the second or the only other team of one in the room. So I can definitely relate to Sharma. And I do everything from coding and project managing and getting the creative push through the creative team, as well as the strategic growth and kind of planning out the roadmap and whatnot. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Sean Nelson. I'm the Director of Marketing at 3 Day Blinds. I've been with 3 Day Blinds for about going on 8 years now, but been in marketing for about a year and a half. So it's kind of interesting for me to sit up here because, well, I feel like I really should be an expert in all this stuff and have like wonderful knowledge to share. I'm really here to kind of learn and understand what you guys have been doing. So I'm happy to be up here and share what I know about data and my experience, but it's your experience that I really want to hear about.
So we're here to talk about technology stacks and how they affect what we do from a everyday perspective, and really what technology that the panel up here is looking at, what they're bringing in-house, what they're working with on a day-to-day basis, and kind of talk through kind of what's happening, what's happened, how things have changed in the last 5 years, and what they're looking for the future. So we're going to focus on tech stacks. We're not going to focus on development stacks, so software frameworks and things like that. But right now, the tech ecosystem is flooded with clouds, platforms. Everything has an acronym. So if you looked at the description for this panel, it was ESPs. There were a bunch of 3-letter acronyms. So one of the things, if you're a veteran of MediaPost's Email Insider Summit, there was a crew that used to do a round robin flash, throw out a question, come up with as many answers as you can. So we're going to do the same thing with technology stacks. So we're going to see how many acronyms for technology we can come up with while we're on stage. So once we're through, we'll throw it out to the audience, see if anybody has any more of those three-letter acronyms. I came up with about 8, so we'll see how many the panel can come up with. So, Sean, why don't we start with you?
Oh, good. I get the easy ones. CRM, ESP. We talked about those. CDN. I think I could feel like CNN, ABC. I'm not even going to try anymore.
All right. Well, yeah. Ryan, why don't you...
I can add a few to that, I guess. I mean, there's CDP, ERP. I mean, you got AWS and GCP. I guess maybe constitute that, but I won't take all the fun. So
It's awesome. Now there's like one left. MAP?
there you go.
Yeah, that's all I got.
I got a couple more. So we have a DMP,
I thought we said DMP. Oh, no.
CMS,
Oh, right.
DAM.
Yeah.
Anybody else out in the audience have one that we haven't mentioned?
KPI.
Not quite a tech platform, but nice try.
I like it though.
Yeah.
KPIs are
Very important.
great, very important, very important. Anybody else? So we rattled off about 10 or so. So there's a lot of different technology out there, and being here for the last 3 days, I must have gotten the question, hey, do you use a CMP, CDN, CDP, DMP? Probably about 10 times. And I'm going to throw this question first out to the panel in terms of when you're asked those types of questions, what is your typical response? Do you use these platforms? Do you roll your eyes and say, well, we want to, but we can't because X? What is your experience with these technology platforms, and what are you looking at from a technology perspective? Ryan, let's start with you.
That's a great question. I would say, we have particular goals and paths and roadmaps that we're trying to take, and sometimes you have to be a little bit scrappy, and it's piecemealing different things together in order to accomplish what your goal is. So sometimes that uses this part of this technology, sometimes it uses this part, sometimes they have to talk together, sometimes they don't talk together very well, and you have to try to make them talk to each other. And so it's hard to say, like, oh yeah, like we use this to do this. We use, an ESP, but we also use a CDP to send API calls, and we use our e-commerce platform to trigger things, and it's just kind of a big mash of.
So can you describe your tech stack a little bit more? Not necessarily vendors, but what type of systems that you are using in your efforts?
Yeah, so ESP is at least my main world, but we do have a CDP that's being developed in a larger capacity. We have an e-commerce platform. We have BI tool. We have AWS. I would say we have an ERP. Most of them, we check most of the boxes.
Newt, how about yourself?
Coming from a B2B space, it doesn't mean we have less tools. They're just a little different. We don't have an ERP. We don't have a customer data platform. We use a CRM. I think most companies have some form of CRM. And then, of course, that integrates with our marketing automation tool. And then we have a few other things. I spend most of my time in our probably just in our marketing automation tool, but also in the CRM as well, making sure that data is flowing properly between the two. It's really important. And I also do some consulting work on the side, and folks that maybe are a little new to the space ask a lot of questions about, well, what do I need? Which one's the best? You have to remember that there's no right answer, and it really just depends on your business and what you're trying to achieve, and not to get like Anthony said, shiny object syndrome, and just want all the things. They may not apply to you.
Sean, how about yourself?
I'm not going to lie. When people ask me if I use one of these 3-letter acronyms, way too often I have to say, I don't know. What does that mean? Like, for instance, just really quick, what is a DAM?
Digital asset
Digital
management.
asset management.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have that. Yeah, I just didn't know that's what it's called. But yeah, we have one of those. And when thinking about our tech platform, we have all these tools. Our CRO is very, very digital focused. It's almost like any shiny new thing, he'll spark and be like, yeah, we need to have that. What I've discovered coming into to my new role in marketing is that very often we have strongly overlapping systems where we'll have, what is it, the one that like you put your website on, whatever. I'm going to say Sitefinity. CMS. So we have a CMS that can do a whole bunch of things, and then we layer on an A/B testing platform that does like 90% of the same things that our CMS does, but no one actually knew that our CMS did it. So now we're paying extra money to have this other thing. And then we're like, all right, well, we need to have this other type of tool that does a little bit more, which then has a 90% overlap with our A/B testing tool. And I've really had to come back in and say, all right, well, where's the value being added? Like, we're spending a lot of money, and I don't necessarily want to like fire every vendor, but I just want to understand, how does this piece fit in with that piece? Why do we need both of them? And how can we actually add value from the new piece, this new tool that we say is so different and special and shiny? It's a tough job. So yeah, we have a lot of tools, and I really think in the future we're probably going to have way too many of them because so many of our vendors are consolidating and all of a sudden offering everything under the sun, which makes it even more challenging.
So let's dive into that a little bit further. You're talking about value. As you look at your ecosystem, what tech is providing the most value or giving you the most benefit from your spend right now?
Well, I'll take this one because for me it might be different than you guys, but my BI tool is the most important piece I have, because without data, without knowing what is happening and then being able to determine why it's happening and tell other people what we should do about it, none of these tools do anything for me. And another thing that you guys might experience or not, I'm not sure, but each one of my tools really only supports their aspect. So if I'm trying to get reporting, if the tool does have good reporting, it's really talking about what it does and not what it does in conjunction with our business, right? I don't really care about display so much. And it sounds bad. I don't care so much about email. I care about how email integrates into our marketing stack and how it integrates into our customer message and what we're doing to support our customer with email. And without knowing how it fits in, it's useless. So BI is great.
Brian or Newt?
Yeah, I would say definitely in my world, one-man team of the email channel. So the ESP is the most in my world, but I would say company-wide, probably the biggest shift, because we've had an ESP for pretty much ever since we've been D2C. But the biggest change that we've had is again, kind of like you were talking about, we had all these different systems. We had our ERP that had, purchasers, and then we had our email subscribers and our ESP, and, we had our social platform and whatnot, but we didn't have any, one place where everybody lived. Some people just purchased, but not all those people who purchased opted in, so they're not in our, ESP. So when we created that CDP, that was kind of, we're using that as our one place that holds all of our information for all of our customers, whether they're opted in, whether they're purchasers, whether they're at whatever stage of the life cycle. So that's holistically company-wide, that's probably the biggest piece that kind of drives most of the data.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on who you ask. I'm with Ryan in that the marketing automation platform is my favorite and where I derive the most value. Because, unlike a lot of really savvy analytics folks, that's not my area of expertise. And so if you give me Tableau or ClickSense, I might cry a little bit. But we're in a marketing automation platform. This is where I feel very comfortable to move data around, orchestrate automation, etc. But I think a lot of any company really might say, well, our customer data platform or our CRM is really the most important place because that's where all of the prospect and customer data is. So I just think it depends on who you ask and what that person or that team's goal is.
Yeah, I think that's important, and part of that process is selecting the right tech stack to bring in, and then after you go through that point of making that selection, you then have to implement onboard and then figure out how to use it within your own workflow and use cases, because during the sales process, most of the times it's, yeah, we can do that, and you can do that with our tool, and then you get in and you're like, okay, now what? So anybody have a recent implementation, onboarding story that they can walk us through and kind of walk through that timeline from initiation to actual onboarding and making good use of that technology?
For email, if anyone's heard of it. Yeah, I was really excited about it, but I knew it was going to be a really difficult process, and I think just trying to get everyone on board with the idea of getting this sort of vendor, and I'll explain what it is in a minute. From the time I started talking to the salespeople to the time we signed the contract, that was a year. Even though it's not an ESP, it's not an ERP, it's not a huge platform, it's a solution that allows you to put your email templates into like a drag and drop interface, and anyone can log in and build an email, but you lock down certain parts of it so that your brand is protected. So a lot of larger brands, you don't have one team that sends out email, so you don't have that consistency. So you have to kind of use process management in order to make sure nobody does any crazy stuff and takes your logo and puts a smiley emoji on it, which that has literally happened before. We can't have that happen. So Taxi for Email will allow you, and sorry, this is a shameless plug for them. They're great. And I did really like the relationship that we built in the year that I was talking to them. That was important to me as well. But they really do support enterprise brands, and one of their biggest case studies was they were allowing, I think, it was a coffee brand, to send out 64 different versions of their emails very quickly, because then you just drag and drop different sections, allow you to add merge fields. But the whole process, it was a lot of convincing people that this is something that you need to use, figuring out an onboarding plan, and then an education and enablement plan as well for a lot of larger organizations where you have a large number of stakeholders. Education is usually a really big part of it. And Anthony mentioned adoption. There's often an adoption gap, and I knew like one measure of success for me for this tool globally would be to make sure that the adoption gap was minimized. Because if I'm responsible for this tool, it's my budget, it's my money, and my reputation's on the line. And if nobody uses it, I'm going to look like an idiot. So that was kind of a huge part of the plan. And as I was leaving that company, my replacement, I told her, I was like, you better don't mess this up for me. This is my legacy. But I think that just goes to say, like, even if it's a smaller tool, like a lot of planning, especially the larger your organization is, and a lot of time needs to be spent figuring out how you're going to close that adoption gap and make sure that everybody that needs or can benefit from the tool is actually getting everything they need, education, enablement, support, etc.
So I want to jump in on a couple of things you mentioned, and more around decision-making process and ownership of the tech stack. Panel and folks in the room, how many of you as a brand are the sole decision maker for a tech stack that you bring into the organization? Meaning you have full control of saying, hey, this is the need, here's the solution I want, and I can sign the contract from a dotted line perspective. And anybody have full control over everything? Founder beer brand.
Jealous.
Makes sense.
Jealous.
So maybe one or two. How about you guys on stage? Can you kind of go full scale and make a decision, sign, and go for it?
I mean, I go step 1, step 2-ish, but yeah that definitely ends at step 3.
At a larger organization, usually, if you're not on marketing ops will be like, "What are you doing? What's over here? What? We have all these opinions." And then, of course, your information security teams, potentially other teams as well. Your sales enablement, your CRM teams are going to be wanting to understand how this impacts their data. I mean, it's what does Serious Decisions call it? It's no longer a demand. It's like a demand unit. So it's like a group of people, and the larger the organization, the larger this group of decision makers, and we all kind of have to work together to figure out the right answer.
Go ahead.
Well, I'd say for my sake, I don't think that having a single point of decision would be good for me or my company. It'd be kind of cool, I could get something done really quick, but if I can't defend my decision to someone else who needs to sign that contract, then what's the point of making that decision? And so, yes, it slows things down, or yes, I have to get other people's opinions, but so often that other opinion is going to be something that can add value to the discussion. And defending your decision at least makes you think it out a few extra steps. If I have to sit in a room and explain to my CEO why we need this and why we're spending X amounts of thousands of dollars, I should be able to defend it.
Document everything. Write everything down. If you don't have an RFP, just make sure you have an exact understanding of your problems and kind of what problems you're trying to solve, and what are the stakeholders involved, what data sources are going to be involved, et cetera, and so forth. Just write everything down, plan to the nth degree. And
that was kind of hard to expound a little bit. That was, I kind of went to my director and kind of initiated the, hey, I think we need to consider, a shift here. Here's the reasons why. Then together we kind of put together that RFP. This is, nice. And then pitched it to our VPs and up the chain. It was definitely lots of sharing ideas, but we had a lot of different departments that we had to make sure we're clued in, not just on the dev side, because that was a huge piece of it, but then also on the merchant side and on the brand side, and yeah.
So I see John walking around with signs and Steve standing up. So we're coming close to the end of our time. So one last question for the panel. As you're looking at technology out in the marketplace today, what is the one technology you have your eye on to potentially bring in to help you round out your current tech stack?
Oh, God. There's so many.
Just one. The most important, that you would say.
For me, probably like a data hygiene solution, something that could sit on, the front end of our website and just ping a server and make sure your email is valid, stuff like that. Just to kind of help data's everything, right? We talked about this the entire time, so I would say that.
Great, Ryan.
I would say probably next in line is a loyalty platform. We have a great brand, and we have a lot of one-time purchasers, but the data shows that if we can get a second purchase, then it's a quickly cascading effect where a lot of our best fans have 5, 6, 10 pairs of Keen shoes. So so kind of helping to encourage that loyalty, and we have a pro program, so it'll kind of looking to expand that. And
Great. Sean?
Say, for my sake, this is going to sound silly, we're really looking at options for a new CRM. And not that CRMs are new and exciting and different, but if you implemented your CRM, I don't know, for our sake, 15 years ago, things change. And even if you go with the exact same system, the structure of that data needs to change to the point where you might as well either consider the same system a completely new instance of it, or just get a whole new system. So, a well thought out CRM would be our next big step.
Great. Well, thank you guys for coming up and staying for the last panel on the last day, and everyone out in the audience for sure. I think we're going to open up for some questions.
Yeah, let's see if we have some questions.
Oh, sorry. I just want to thank you guys because this was incredibly helpful to me, and I'm not going to redo my pitch all over again, but it's interesting to have you validate some of the challenges and complexities about buying technology and experiences with vendors. And Sean, what you said is really resonated with me because, again, if I told you how many meetings I sit in where we talk about how can we differentiate, what are we going to go to market with, what are we going to hang our hat on? It's not the technology. I compete against incredible brands. I have nothing but good things to say about the technology of the folks we compete against, but it is in the approach, at least in my opinion, both through the sales process, to Newt's point about trying to identify use cases and making recommendations on the right mix of products, not overselling somebody something they're never going to be able to use, but then also in the ongoing commitment to make sure that what you are selling, people are able to use. And being there and going through the tough periods like implementations, which are brutal.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience, big brands are usually pretty risk averse. And if you can show as a vendor, if you can show a use case in the same vertical, or even a competitor, that usually is a really good thing to do. It kind of helps appease some of that fear. If so-and-so, if IBM can do it, then we can,
Just one point on that, because I just said this to Marion. Again, and maybe this is helpful, but as somebody who's selling into organizations, when I get a request for a demo, we hate doing show-up, throw-up demos. Here's how you build a segment, and here's how you make an email. What really works for us and resonates with clients is when we can execute against specific use cases. So tell your vendor, ask whoever you're considering for 4 or 5 use cases, whatever it is, stuff you want to see happen, and have them demo it in the tool itself. Yep. And this way you can see.
Being impacted by mergers. When you have tools that are suddenly being incorporated and consolidated.
Oh yeah.
Into other people's stacks and other people's technologies. Yeah. How have you been experiencing that in the market, and how are you dealing with it?
I can speak to that because, when I worked at Red Hat, it was gobbling up lots of things, and then it got gobbled up, and then ADP does similar things. It's constant. So whether you're on the team that has to figure out how to merge, another data source into your ecosystem, or you're wanting to pull your hair out, like that one meme, because an acquisition refuses to move off their ESP and use yours, and they're just digging their heels. It can be really hard, and for larger organizations, it happens a lot. And sometimes, you find out that some random people are using MailChimp to send emails and you didn't even know about. I mean, no.
How about when your vendors are merging?
Vendor mergers?
Yeah.
That's interesting. It happens.
I can jump in there.
Ahead.
I mean, there's been a lot of activity within the ESP space
Yeah.
over the last 10 years or so. And I think the clouds, I'll just categorize them as the clouds because everybody's a cloud now or some type of thing in the sky. They never work as well together as they did apart. And it's been a real challenge from an integration standpoint when you're using a technology, it's got its own dev team, it's got its own dev cycle, they're putting enhancements into the system, there's ownership there. From my experience, when it's been brought into a broader organization, that hyper-focus on that one specific thing changes, and sometimes at a detriment to the ability to get data in and out, share between systems that were once separated and now are joined. There's still challenges there. So I think as the clouds grow up, it will get easier, and it has gotten easier, but it's still a real challenge once those systems kind of come together and merge.
I think there's a fear too, because if you're using a software solution, you're really, really happy with it, and all of a sudden it gets gobbled up by Oracle, you're just like, oh my God. And Eloqua user, former Responses user, how is that going to affect the relationship I have with the vendors? Usually it's a smaller vendor, and then they get gobbled up by larger vendors. Is that going to affect, the relationship we have, the amount of support that I get? It's a serious fear, and I've been part of organizations that have left, done huge, ESP migrations for that exact reason. So yeah, definitely something on our minds.
I mean, I can actually speak to that because that was one of the major, well, not major, it was a large factor in why we decided to go another way, is we had a smaller that was bought up, and, our just level of service, we had an account manager, but it was more, his job was more about renewing and stuff, and It wasn't about coming to us with ideas. There was no strategic partnership there, and that's what I was really looking for, was kind of that relational, or that relationship with your tech companies. So
Yeah.
all your vendors out there, keep that in mind. As a on the brand side, that's a really, really important factor.
Who said that you sell experiences, not products? So when your experience is poor, you're willing to take the risk and go to another product that is maybe new and unknown, because the experience is so important.
Yeah, we've had a lot of issues with our smaller companies being gobbled up by bigger companies, and what I've kind of realized through my time working with all these vendors, it's just kind of par for the course. We at 3 Day Blinds, like I said, we take all the nice shiny new things, and it means often that we're testing small companies or startups. And if you're going to work with a small company or startup, I mean, let's be realistic here. That company's goal is most likely to be bought by someone. And just understand that going into it. Have that transparent relationship going into it. Understand that this product that you're buying into and hopefully the relationship that you're building may change, but also just at least embrace it while you have it. I mean, sometimes the startups are worth it. Just take that. If you get in there in the beginning and you can be one of the companies that helps drive their strategic goals, in other words, they'll change their system to meet your needs, it can be worth it, even if that doesn't last forever. So it's just taking a chance and understanding that it's going to happen.
Sometimes acquisitions can be positive. For example, when Adobe bought Marketo, I heard from a few people at my previous job that made them a little bit more attractive because they were already using quite a bit of the Adobe stack, and so potentially after years, when they would integrate the two systems, it might make it a little bit more of a seamless experience, maybe even get a price discount or something. But yeah, it's not always negative, but sometimes definitely is.
I was actually about to ask that question. If anybody could say there was an instance where a merger of vendors actually worked to their advantage. Because in all the years I've been doing this, I've never heard a client say, "Oh, I'm really glad that my vendor got gobbled by somebody larger because that opens up so many possibilities for me now," which is exactly what their press release said.
I mean, like she said, I think give it a couple more years, and I think a lot of those clouds will figure out how to make those companies that they bought work better together. So maybe in a couple years. It would be.
George, panel, we're gonna move this over to a round table. Thanks, guys. That was a great ending for us.